The Honourable Member for Laventille East, Morvant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's very painful to sit here and hear the Member of Parliament for Oakwood East stand up and not defend the amendment to this bill that we have before us here this afternoon. Mr. Speaker, the Member for Oakwood East mainly spoke about the opposition. Mr. Speaker, I just want to talk about, the Member for Oakwood mentioned about who could talk to who and so on. But I want those on the opposite side to remember, when the Member of Parliament for Siparia became the leader of the UNC, what did the Member of Parliament for Tabaquite, Caroni East and Oakwood say? I think that the Member for Oakwood East should be talking about that. When the Member of Parliament for Tunapuna left to join or to start a party, a new party, what did they say about the Member for Tunapuna? What did the Member of Parliament for Shogunas West say about the Member of Parliament for Siparia? These are the issues. If you want to talk about, you cannot come here. They have no moral authority. Come here and talk about who should talk to who and who should align with who. They have no moral authority to do that. Mr. Speaker, the Member of Parliament for Oakwood East mentioned that we don't want them to do anything where crime is concerned. What we want is for them to do what is right, what is constitutional, and what makes sense, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, coming on the heels of an ill-conceived state of emergency, for which we are still to learn what was the intent and what was the derived benefits, the government is here with another amendment. Amendment to the Defense Act, Chapter 1401. This is yet another ill-advised expression of the government's so-called crime plan. Mr. Speaker, I would like the Minister to inform this House what is the real reason behind this amendment. Because this amendment seems to be giving the members of the Defense Force powers so that if the government cannot get the police to do what they want to do, then they would use soldiers to do it. Mr. Speaker, what consultation took place? Who did the government consult with in the police service and in the defense force? We would like to know. Why aren't the police being allowed to perform their statutory functions? Isn't this an attempt to demoralize the police service? Mr. Speaker, the amendment to this bill, which is now called the Miscellaneous Provisions, Defense and Police Complaints Bill 2013, refers to subsection 5.2 of the Defense Act. And Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote, "Every unit shall be charged with the defense of Trinidad and Tobago with such other duties as may from time to time be defined by the Council." Mr. Speaker, the bill attempts to amend the Defense Act to give members of the Defense Force the same powers as the police by means of a cross-reference to Section 5.2 of the Defense Act. Mr. Speaker, I would like to quote subsection 5.3, which is the new amendment. When any member of the Defense Force, having been charged under subsection 2 with the duty of assisting any member of the police service in the maintenance of law and order and is engaged in so doing, he shall have the same powers, authorities, privileges, and immunities as are given by law to the members of the police service. End of quote. Mr. Speaker, subsection 5.2 does not deal with the charging of a member of the Defense Force. It refers to a unit, not a member of the Defense Force. So the cross-reference to section 5.2 of the Defense Act, therefore, does not make sense. The underlying assumption of the amendment regarding section 5.2 is wrong. The Act also states that other duties which can be undertaken from time to time must be defined by the Defense Council. It is therefore incorrect to give the impression that the Chief of Defense Staff has the authority to charge individual members of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force with other duties. These duties must be defined by the Defense Council. Mr. Speaker, the other problem is who makes up the Defense Council. And the Defense Council is outlined in section 7.1 of the Defense Act. And that is the Minister, 2 other members of the cabinet appointed by the Prime Minister, one of whom shall be the Vice Chairman, the Chief of Defence Staff, and the Permanent Secretary. Mr. Speaker, note that this body is made up of 3 ministers, so the ministers are in the majority. By the use of Section 5.2, the government is bringing ministers directly into police business. Can we afford to give a body comprising 3 ministers direct say in the conduct of police business? Mr. Speaker, it is clear in this section that the giving of other duties can only be done by the Defense Council. Where does the Chief of Defence Staff's authority come from, authorizing him to choose members of the Defence Force to do police work? In Section 45 of the Police Service Act, Chapter 1501, one will find the powers of the police. And Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition member mentioned the powers of the police. So I will just move on and I will not outline, but I would like to outline the powers in B. And I would like to quote, a police officer may arrest, charge, and bring before a summary court a person found committing any offense rendering him liable to arrest without warrant, or whom he reasonably suspects of having committed any such offense. End of quote. The amendment does not confine the powers to be given to the defense force, the power of arrest. And I would like to know, well, why not? If we are saying that members of the defense force, we want to give them the powers of arrest, then what is the need to give them all the powers of the police? Well, it is the defense force. Mr. Speaker, it is no wonder many persons, including the Downtown Merchants Association and the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, well, recently the Law Association, Mr. Speaker, mentioned that they are concerned about the intention of this bill. Mr. Speaker, even the chairman of their LRC mentioned his concern about this bill.
Did this bill with LRC? Tell us the bill with LRC.
Mr. Speaker, many of the rank and file members of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force are not in agreement with this proposed legislation. As we speak, Mr. Speaker, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Social and Welfare Association, they are having a meeting right now to talk about their concerns about this amendment to the legislation. And there's a petition circulating in the police service. They had to seek a meeting with the Minister of National Security and the Commissioner of Police yesterday, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a copy of the letter. I would like to quote the letter addressed to the President of the Police Service Social and Welfare Association. We, the undersigned members of the Police Service, it is dated 7th of March. The subject is Urgent General Council Meeting. Sir, we, the undersigned members of the Police Service, request as immediate urgent meeting to discuss the issuance of precepts to soldiers. We view this as a serious catastrophic decision which will emasculate and further demotivate the police officers. It can also initiate an irreversible trend of interference in the independence of the police service and its operations. Thank you. And this was copied, this was signed by Emerald Bruce, who is the past president of the association. And it was copied to the vice president of the association, the secretary, the assistant secretary, the treasurer, the trustee, and the first division representative. So you see here, Mr. Speaker, I would like to know if what confrontation take place, because clearly the police officers are very concerned and a meeting is taking place right now. Mr. Speaker, the Attorney General stated that the Commissioner of Police and the Chief of Defence Force are in agreement with this bill. Mr. Speaker, they are in agreement with giving powers of the police to soldiers. Is this correct? Well, if they agree, by now they should know that those below them are not in agreement with these amendments. Sure. I wish to bring to your attention, Mr. Speaker, Supplemental Police Act, Chapter 1502, Section 14, which states that every constable, and I quote, shall have all rights, powers, authority, privileges, and immunities, and be liable to all such police duties and responsibilities as any member of the police service. Mr. Speaker, in the case of the defense force, the police, the proposed amendment gives authority and powers, but does not include the part which says liable to all such duties and responsibilities. So the soldier have power, but without duties and responsibilities. And Mr. Speaker, now that they have brought a further amendment which places the soldier under the ambit of the police complaints authorities, they still have not put in liability to all such duties and responsibilities. That is still missing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, therefore, no accountability. Let us look at the word engaged in clause 2.3, because, Mr. Speaker, this proposed insertion, which speaks about a member of the defense force who is assisting a member of the police service in the maintenance of law and order, is engaged in so doing. So, Mr. Speaker, what does the term engage mean? Will the member of the defense force be engaged physically or by instruction by the police? Mr. Speaker, the bill states that the police have to engage the assistance of the defense force. Can the police engage the defense force and then withdraw? Where does the amendment say that there must be a physical presence of the police? Because persons have been talking in this house and in the media saying that the police would be accompanied by members of the defense force, or they have to be accompanied by the police. But where in the amendment does this say that, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, when we talk about engagement, can the police initiate an engagement and then withdraw? This needs to be clarified by the minister, Mr. Speaker. And I am reminded of the instructions given to the Chief of Defense Staff to assist in the breaking down of the highway reroute movement camp. Was that a form of engagement? Was it by instruction? Mr. Speaker, in conferring all the police powers and privileges on soldiers, I would like the minister to inform us whether they have to take an oath. You see, Mr. Speaker, members of the police service and members of the defense force have to take and subscribe to an oath of affirmation of office and secrecy before assuming duties. Now, Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote the oath that a police officer has to take. And this can be found in section 72 of the Police Service Act, 5th schedule. And it states, and I quote, "I do swear that I will well and truly serve Trinidad and Tobago in the office of, without favor of affection, malice, or ill will, and that I will cause the peace to be kept and preserved in Trinidad and Tobago, and that I will prevent to the utmost of my power all offenses against the same, and that while I shall continue to hold the said office, I will, to the best of my skill and knowledge, discharge all the duties." All the duties thereof, faithfully according to law, and will not, without due authority in that behalf, in any manner whatsoever, publish or communicate any facts or information, being facts, and it goes on, Mr. Speaker, so help me God. The defense force also has to take an oath, and this oath states, and I quote, "I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, and that I will, as in duty bound, honestly and faithfully defend the state and the dignity of the state against all enemies, and will observe and obey all orders of the state and of the officers set over me." End of quote, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, is it okay to just confer police powers to a serving member of the defense force without him subscribing to the oath of office which pertains to the police service? Mr. Speaker, police powers are subject to checks and balances, and the Police Service Commission is a check and balance on police powers. Will these members of the defense force with police powers fall under the ambit of the Police Service Commission? Because the answer seems to be no, and the amendment does not provide for that. Is it that an unconstitutional transfer of police powers is now to take place? Is it possible to transfer police powers without regard to the constitutional checks and balances on the police service? I suggest that this amendment is improperly bypassing the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago.